Good evening, guys. Can you hear me? Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. All right, wonderful. Okay, guys, I just wanted to introduce you guys to the tutor who's going to be taking you through ECO20A and ECO20B, so that you can at least get acquainted. But in short, before I introduce him to the tutor, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. So what we are going to be doing this semester is we have got two approaches. The first approach is our priority for the month of February is doing the assignment. That is our main priority. So which means that for the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will be focusing on the assignment until the end of February. And that is the fee that I am requesting you to pay. That is the 250, which means it will cover us for the first month, and it will mainly be for the assignment. So we are going to do, I think, 2 or 3 lectures to cover all of the questions on the assignment. What we'll do is we'll come through on Saturdays, that is for economics. 20A, it will be, I think, 6 o'clock like this, or we'll adjust depending on the load shedding. And then for the other one, for 20B, it will be most likely 7 or 8 o'clock every Saturday, right? But like I said, these times are adjustable. With the guys that have paid, we can discuss more. If you think we need to adjust to specific days, we are open to doing that. But we don't want to make the discussion with everyone, because it can become a long story. Rather, we'll just discuss with the guys that have made the payments, if we are going to change. But for now, for planning purposes, let's plan with Saturday evenings. I believe from 5 o'clock up until 9 o'clock, we can dedicate that time to be doing the assignments for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then once the assignments have been done, when we get into the next month, if you guys want to continue to do the daily class, the weekly classes, so that you start preparing your exams, then there will be another fee that you have to pay for the following month. But we'll discuss that once the assignment has been done. So the 250 that you'll be paying is for at least 1 month, and it will cover this specific assignment that is for February, and it will cover the assignment that you will be doing. So there's 250 for those that are doing 20A, and another 250 for those that are doing 20B. And the new lecturer, I'm sure most of you already know him. I have dealt with him before. His Fortune is the one who's going to be taking you through. So Fortune will send you guys whatever notes that he makes on the assignment. He will send it to you, and then the recording of each lecture that we do will also be sent to you, which means that if you have got load shedding on your end and you are not able to attend, you will still get the notes, you will still get the recording. And then, because it's also not just a once-off lecture, we're going to do it for 2 or 3 weeks. You can still join in the next week and ask the questions that you might want to ask. Then also feel free to ask even in the group. I'll attend to all questions that you send in the group for the specific subject. So I think that's basically it. Then also for those of you that are interested in accounting, ACC 101, we are doing that one on Sunday evenings. I'm going to introduce you tomorrow to the person who will be assisting you for accounting. Then for ECO10A and ECO10B, that will be a different story. I think those ones will start next week, but I think you guys are more interested in 20A and 20B, and then ACC 101. So those are the ones that we are mainly going to focus on in terms of the assignments and the weekend classes. But like I said, if you need further classes outside the assignment, don't worry, we will talk about it. We will do the classes. It's just that for now, I want us to focus on the assignments for the month of February, so that we know that the assignments are done, and then we can discuss logistics for preparation of exams and for all the other classes that you might be interested in. But for now, let's focus on the assignment. Then please make sure that you have made your payments by Friday next week, because starting on Saturday, I'll only be taking the guys that have made the what? That have made the payments only. They are the ones that will be receiving the link to join the class. So make sure that by Friday this coming week, you have made your payment for each class that you want to join. So for now, like I said, ECO20A, ECO20B, ACC 101, those classes will be available for you guys for the assignments. Any other classes, we can obviously discuss even in the group so that I can get you someone to come and come and do the classes. If there are any questions for me, I will join in maybe a bit later for the 20B class. You can also join in and you can ask me if there are any other questions. For now, I've got another class that I need to rush to. But Fortune, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, James, for
all right, wonderful. You can talk. Thanks.
All right. Welcome to ECO20A Microeconomics 2. All right, my name is Fortune. For those of you that might be familiar with me, and for those of you that might not be familiar with me, I'll be taking you for this particular session. So we want to focus on the elements of the assignment as has been reiterated by James. And the assignment is due on the 21st of April, and I believe that the earlier the better, you know that you are done with everything within the assignment. So just looking at the overall assignment, it had 1, 2, 3 questions. Let me see the number of questions. So basically it's made up of 9 questions that we are expected to be covering. Some are short questions, some need a little bit of detail, some need a little bit of calculations here and there. But what is important is for you to understand the background of the information that you are going to be presenting within the assignment. So since today is just an introductory class to what you're going to be dealing with within the assignments, we're not going to delve much into the assignment. We're just going to give a snippet of how we're going to be conducting the assignments. So what is important for you to understand with microeconomics in general is that you need to have a background of microeconomics at a layman's level, which is just the general microeconomics. So now with microeconomics 2, it goes a little bit deeper to what was dealt with in the previous module in relation to microeconomics. So if you're talking about demand, you'd see that now we're introducing calculations here and there. We're introducing further elements in relation to various topics. So for today, I just want to focus on question 4. We're not going to take much of your time since it's just an introductory element. So question 4 was in relation to the topic of demand, and it stated that the table lists the demand curve for sports bags for each member of John's family. Use information to determine John's aggregate family demand for sports bags. Then there is the number of family members, the various demand elements in relation to the equations that apply to each individual. So those equations obviously are the ones that would, at the end of the day, be conclusive as to how that particular family member is going to be responding to changes in the prices, etc. Then we have the questions. So we're supposed to first of all calculate the family demand. So you need to understand what demand is, what the various elements surrounding demand, how demand can be categorized into its different categories. So I'm just going to give a brief background of demand and then get to answering the question. So in relation to demand, demand can be defined as the needs and wants that individuals within a particular market want and are able to obtain them in relation to the monetary elements for them to be able to acquire those particular So you'd see that demand can be categorized by an individual in relation to what within the market. So something is telling me my to all right. I think I'm still audible. Okay, so in relation to that, with individual demand, with market demand or industrial demand, then we have what we deal with in macroeconomics, which we refer to as aggregate demand, which we are not going to be dealing with in relation to this particular module. So the two demands that we deal with are basically the individual demand, which is the demand by a particular individual within a particular spectrum, either within a family or within a market. Then we have market or industrial demand, which relates to the demand for a particular product within a particular market. So the demand that we have presented with within the questions are the demands of individuals, which we can aggregate into a family demand, which we can get in relation to how much is being demanded for that particular product. So just trying to answer question 4.1 whilst you are still there. Question 4.1 is stating that using this information to determine John's aggregate family demand for sports picks. So the aggregate family demand is basically a summation of the total demand within the within that particular family. So basically, when you add up the total demand within that particular family, you get the family demand in relation to the particular product. So basically, in relation to what has been presented here, we are basically going to be adding all of the equations, variables, explanatory variables together for us to get the dependent variables, which is the particular demand. So basically we're adding all of these equations, 100 plus, so allow me just to type in there, 100 minus 2p plus 50 minus 5p plus 300, that one is straightforward. Then for Kate, we have 150 plus with minus. Then we have P over 2. Then we have the demand for David, which is 0. So if you add up that those equations, we get the total demand in relation to the quantities that are being demanded within that particular market, within that particular family. So basically, we are now applying the laws of mathematics for us to be able to solve that. We are adding like terms together for those that did very well in their basic arithmetic. So the like terms that we're adding together here is basically the numbers and those with coefficients of P together. So the numbers, we have 100 plus 150 plus 300 plus 150. So that gives us 150 plus 150, that's 300, plus another 150, that is 600. So that is for the numbers. So we have 600. Then we have minus 2p minus 5p. So this one allow me to write them. Minus 5 minus 2p minus 5p. Then we have minus p. Then we have a negative half p, that's p over 2. So basically that's half p. So that comes as that. All right, then we basically again further simplify that equation. So negative 2p minus 5p minus p. So basically when they are all negatives, you're basically summing up. So that's minus 7p minus 8p. So minus 8p and a half. So we have 8 negative 8 and a half p. So allow me to just put it like a half, then p. So all of these are part of the P's. All right. So basically, the total market demand can be explained by this particular demand. So basically, that is 600 minus 8.5p. If you were to further again simplify that particular equation, so that becomes 600 minus that half becomes 8.5 because it's a half p, 8.5p. So basically, that is the demand curve for the family. All right, so basically when you are asked to sum up individual demand curves, you get the market demand or the particular family in relation to the demand that is in relation to that particular group or that particular element that we're looking at. So basically those are some of the elements that we are expected to be knowing in relation to this particular module. Then there are other elements that we can deem to be background or to be background information that you're supposed to be having in relation to the determinants of demand. You're expected to be knowing the determinants of demand. We're trying to get into the greater details as we get into the tutorial sections. So for now, I'll try to skip for, that for now so that it doesn't take much of our time. So basically, when it comes to the drawing of a demand curve, we understand that a demand curve is basically an illustration that expresses how much is being demanded at a particular price. So you'd see that we can use the market demand curve that we have calculated for us to get how much is demanded at each particular price in relation to the demand curve that we can derive in order for us to be able to derive the market demand curves that sometimes we may be required to be calculating. So if you look at question 4.2, it's stating that how is a market demand curve different from an individual demand curve? Which curve is likely to be more price elastic, and assume that there are no network elasticities. So we understand that when it comes now to a market demand curve now aggregates all of the demands that are in relation to the individuals within the market. So hence you'd find out that in relation to price sensitivity, the market demand curve would be more price sensitive as compared to the individual demand curves. Because when it comes to an individual, sometimes individuals do not respond in relation to the changes in the prices, etc., because of different needs and wants. We find out that the amounts that they demand at a particular price levels do not change significantly in relation to the changes in the price. What would rather change is the market demand curve when you are now aggregating the total demand within that particular market. So we find out that the market demand curve is likely going to be, when you're now talking about price elasticity, is likely going to be price elastic, more price elastic than the individual demand curve, because we are now aggregating the total demand within the market, and hence as a result, we'll find out that the market would become more price sensitive. So you can see this if you are to draw the individual demands of these particular individuals. You'd find out that if we had enough time, we're going to be drawing each and every one of them. You'd find out that most of them would be steep demand curves, basically illustrating the fact that if they are steep, they do not respond rapidly to changes in the price. But if they are gentle, it means that a small change in the price would rapidly affect the quantities that are demanded at each particular price. So hence, as a result, we find out that when it comes to the market demand curve, it is more price sensitive than the individual demand curves. All right, so that is for 4.2. And the other element that is being talked about is in relation to price elasticity. We talked about it, that the market demand curve is likely going to be more price elastic as compared to the individual demand curve. So we're basically saying that the market demand curve would be price sensitive or more price elastic compared to the individual demand curves. So that is the conclusion for question 4.2. Then question 4.3 is stating that explain the difference between a movement along the demand curve and a shift in the demand curves. So we understand that when it comes to movements along the demand curves and shifts along the demand curves, they basically emanate from the determinants of demand, because the determinants of demand are the ones that influences the extent to which demand is going to respond in relation to the changes of the determinants of demand. So in relation to the determinants of demand, you're supposed to be knowing the determinants of demand. What are the determinants of demand? Which elements in relation to the determinants of demand results in a shift in the demand curve, and which elements results in a movement along the demand curve. So basically, in terms of the elements, this is a basic highlight of the determinants of demand. We have the price of the product, we have the nature of the products in relation to the relationship between the products and other products, whether the products are complements, whether the products are substitutes. It also affects in relation to how the particular product is going to be affecting demand. All right, I'm reading someone in the chat. Okay, I'll come back to that. Lillian, I'll come back to your question on 4.2. Then if we understand the various metrics in relation to the determinants of demand, we know that in relation to price is the only factor among the determinants of demand that results in a movement along the demand curve. So when you're talking about a movement along the demand curve, so this is an example of a demand curve. So when you're talking about a movement along the demand curve, you're basically talking about the movements between either point A, point D, point C, point B, up until point A. So any movement along the demand curve as a result of changes in the price is what we are referring to basically as the movements along the demand curve. Someone is saying that they cannot hear me. I hope you are connected in relation to your microphone, your audio. Make sure that your audio is connected and your volume is properly adjusted. I don't know if there's anyone else who's struggling with hearing me. You can as well make heads up so that I know that it's either an individual or it's generally
we can hear you.
All right. You can hear me. All right. So basically, in relation to movements along the demand curve, we are talking about the influence of price on the quantity demanded. As price is changing from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we are having changes along the same demand curve in relation to points along the same demand curve, affecting the quantities that are being demanded. If price is changing from 5, we see at 5, the quantity demanded is 3. At 4, the quantity demanded is 6. At 3, the quantity demanded is 9. So basically, those movements is what we are referring to as movements along the demand curves. So in terms of the shifts, all of the other determinants apart from price results in a shift in the demand curve. If the price of a complement is to change, and the complement is that particular product that we use in conjunction with a particular product. For instance, we are analyzing bread, the quantity demanded of bread. The quantity demanded of bread would be affected by other complementaries that are used in conjunction with bread. For instance, butter, or rather the quantity demanded of butter would be affected by the quantity or by the price of bread. If the price of bread is to go up, people that like to eat bread and butter obviously would reduce in terms of their consumption of butter because of the increases in the price of bread. So vice versa would apply if the price is to reduce. So in relation to complementaries, you'd find out that if a price of a certain key complementary is to increase or to reduce, you're going to be having a shift in the demand curve. And if the product is a substitute, so when you're talking about substitutes, we're talking about those products that are used in conjunction, or rather that can be used in place of another product. For instance, powdered milk and that liquid milk, which can be either pasteurized milk or whatever it might be. So you'd find out that you cannot use both powdered milk and liquid milk, in as much as I know preparing of my own coffee and tea. I don't know if there are people here that mix both of them, but in as much as I prepare mine, I do not necessarily need to have both of those products. So that means that if the price of powdered milk is to increase, I'm likely going to shift my focus from powdered milk to liquid milk, or if the price of liquid milk is to increase, I'm likely going to shift my focus from liquid milk to powdered milk in relation to my price sensitivity. And that again is going to result at the same price in a shift in the demand curve. So I'm going to be illustrating the shift very soon. Then the other element is the element of income. If the incomes of consumers are to increase and to reduce, obviously to affect the amounts that are demanded at that same particular price tag, as well as other elements in relation to tastes and preferences, as well as the population size or the size of the household. So basically, we're talking about shifts. We're now talking about an entire shift along the demand curve. So even if the price does not change, you would see that the quantity demanded at that same price would necessarily change. So basically, you can see an illustration of a shift in the demand curve. So getting back to the question, it's stating that explain the difference between movement along the demand curve and a shift in the demand curve. So the first difference that we have is that a movement along the demand curve is initiated by a change in the price of the particular product. So if you're looking at the price of margarine, if the price of margarine is to change from 5 to 4 or from 50 Rand to 40 Rand, you would be having a movement along the same demand curve. You'd not have a shift in the demand curve. So along the same demand curve, DM, which is the blue demand curve, you'd have a movement along that same demand curve. So basically that would be initiated by the price. And now when it comes to the shift in the demand curve, you'd find out that you would be having an entire shift in the demand curve that would be initiated by any of the determinants or any of the factors that influences demand other than the price itself. So any factor other than the price itself would result in a shift in the demand curve. So basically, you'd be having an entire shift in the total demand, and you'd find out that in relation to a movement along the demand curve, you would have a simultaneous change in the price of the product and the quantity demanded, which is not the case when it comes to a shift in the demand curve. So in the shift in the demand curve, what changes is the quantity demanded, but not the price. That's the other difference. So the change in the quantity demanded and the change in the price would also be a key difference in relation to a movement and a shift in the demand curve. And we also talked about the determinants, and we talked about the price, and we talked about the quantities that are demanded. All right, so I don't know if you have anything that you'd want to say in relation to that. So basically, those are the differences between the two elements. Now, coming back to 4.2, someone was asking me whether, let me just look at he's stating that how do you get the second last negative P? All right, this is Lillian. She's asking, how do I get the second last P? I don't know if it is in relation to the calculation of the demand curve or to the 4.2 question.
Yes, it's in relation to the calculation.
All right, let me just come back to the calculation of the demand curve. All right, so you're saying, how do I get the second last P? All right, second last P. I'm trying to understand in relation to what you're referring to. Okay, so these are the two derivative equations that we calculated.
Fortune.
Yes.
Fortune, may I
Yes.
interrupt you? Look at Haley or Haley. It's after John. Haley. The only it's only 300 with no P indicated. So if you look at you see your first line of your calculation and you look at the second line and you see 600 minus 2P minus 5P. I agree with that one.
Okay.
And then you say minus P. It's basically
Oh,
1P.
all right. All right, all
So,
right, all right. Thank you for that. Thank you for being too attentive. This was an error on my part. This was an error on my part. It's supposed to be only 300 without any P, so hence it's supposed to be it doesn't have any P in relation to that because we've already added the P's in relation to the particular elements in question. All right, so that means that our P's, if we were to add our P's, negative 2P, negative 5P, and a negative half P, you would get a negative 7.5P. So we are not adding an extra P here. Thank you for that. So it's a negative 2P, negative 5P. We do not have a P on 300. Then a negative half P. All right, so we do not have the extra P that I had added there. That was just in, I don't know whether it's a typing error or it's whatever it is. All right, so thank you for being attentive.
Fortune.
Yes.
I just want to ask a question with regards to that calculation. You say 600 minus 8. So doesn't that become a positive minus minus?
All right.
So second last step.
Okay, you mean like that?
Well,
okay. Second last is here, is it?
yeah, there was a 600 minus 8.
All right, all right. It's a 600 with only a single negative, not a double negative.
Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So that concludes 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. Then 4.4 is stating that calculate the price elasticity of supply using the midpoint formula for each of these three supply curves for the price changes as indicated in the table below. One answer is already provided. I didn't see the answer that's provided here. I don't know whether it's a printing error or maybe I'm not seeing where the answer is in relation to question 4.4. So I would have loved to tackle question 4.4, but it seems like there is some missing information, key missing information, which you're supposed to be using for us to be able to answer question 4.4 fully. So for question 4.4, I don't know if you can get heads up from a lecturer whether it's correct as it is or it needs further attention. I don't know. So I think we're going to be tackling this one with further instructions, especially in relation to how it's presented. Then question 4.5 is stating that based on the table 4.4, answer the following questions. So we did not answer the following questions because we did not complete table 4.4. So that means that in relation to that, we can stop a little bit here. Then there is question 3. I actually wanted to start with question 3 before question 4. Question 3 is stating that suppose that the demand function for corn is QD 10 minus 2P and the supply function is QS 3P minus 5. The government is concerned that the market equilibrium for corn is too low and would like to implement a price support policy to protect the farmers. By implementing the price support policy, the government sets a support price and purchases the extra supply at support price. In this case, the government sets the support price at PS is equals to 4. So basically that is the price support. All right, then question 3.1 is stating that calculate the original market equilibrium price and quantity in the absence of the price support policy. So in relation to the equilibrium price is derived by the interaction between the demand curve and the supply curve. So basically when we have the interaction between the demand curve and the supply curve, that is where we get the equilibrium, as you can see on the graph that is on your screen on the right hand side. you can see that where the demand intersects the supply curve, that is where we get the equilibrium price. So if it is in an equation format, we are basically saying that quantity supplied is equal to quantity demanded, and hence as a result we take the explanatory variables of the two equations, which is 10 minus 2p is equal to, that is for the quantity demanded, and the explanatory variable of quantity supplied, which is 3 p minus 5. So hence as a result, if we are to get an equilibrium in relation to price, we're supposed to basically we're supposed to reduce that particular equation to its core elements. So basically, for us to be able to do so, we apply the laws in relation to mathematics, grouping like terms together. So basically, we're going to be having 10. As that negative 5 shifts to that other side, it becomes a positive. So that becomes 10 minus 10 plus 5. Then we have 3p. When that negative 2p shifts to the other side, it becomes plus 2p. And hence, as a result, we have 15 is equals to 3p minus plus 2p, that's 5p, which gives us a derivative of, we're supposed to take away that 5 to the other side, and for us to be able to do so, because it's a multiplication between 5 and p, we're supposed to divide both sides by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is equals to p. So basically our price, therefore our price is what? Our P
3.
is equals to 3. So basically that means that the equilibrium price is 3. All right. So from there we've calculated in the absence of this support policy. Then 3.2 is saying draw a diagram to show the change in the consumer surplus due to the implementation of the price support policy. Calculate the change in the consumer surplus. So first of all, you need to understand what a consumer surplus is, so that you'll be able to understand it graphically. So a consumer surplus is the difference between the price that consumers are willing to pay within the market and the price that they end up paying for that particular product. So the maximum price that they are willing to pay within the market in relation to consumers is derived by the intersection of the demand curve with the price axis. All right, so come to the graph that I had drawn earlier on. All right, so this is an illustration that you're going to be using for us to be able to illustrate that particular graph. So this one is the demand curve. So I'll just call it D. So that's our demand curve. Then this is our supply curve, which I'll just call S. All right, so we have a demand curve and our supply curve. So for us to be able to draw a diagram, if sometimes maybe you're presented with graphs that have measurements that you're supposed to be adhering to. So for us to be able to do that, we are supposed to use the equations that we have in relation to the demand equation. So this is the demand equation. So demand equation will guide us in relation to the drawing of the demand, this demand function, the demand graph. Here I just drew it because we just want to illustrate a particular concept. But if I had a proper graph, what do you call this? Graph paper with measurements along the y-axis and the x-axis, I was going to be illustrating that to the dot, but because of time, we are just going to give a rundown. So this is our demand equation. That is the one that we use to draw the demand axis. So we are saying basically if the price is equal to 0, what is the demand curve? If the price is now 1, what is the quantity that is demanded? So we'll be having coordinates that you're going to be drawing at each particular point along the demand curve. Then those coordinates are the demand curve that you're going to be drawing. as our demand. But in this particular section, I'm interested in the intersection of the demand curve and the y-axis, which is the price axis. So here we are having the price. Let me just illustrate that in case someone is confused. So this is where we are having the price, and the other side is where we'll be having the quantity. So here we are having the quantity demanded. So I'll just say QT demanded. All right. So on the price axis, I'm interested on the intersection of the demand curve, because we've already calculated the equilibrium. We know that the equilibrium here is 3. So that means that when I come here to the equilibrium, the figure that I would find there would be 3, because that is indicative of the market equilibrium price. So that is the market equilibrium price. Then in relation to the intersection of this, we're now saying that if the quantity demanded is 0, what is the price at 0 quantity demanded? Because this is where the y-axis is intersected with the demand curve at 0 quantity demanded. So we're basically saying now at 0 QD, what is the price? So 0 QD, we then calculate again. We're now saying 0 is equals to 10 minus 2p. Then we throw the 2p to the other side so that we can reduce that particular equation. So when 2p comes to the other side, it's basically adding to this 0 here, so it becomes the only 2p in existence. So for us to be able to get the price at that particular level, is now the division of the 2 on both sides, which is 10 divided by 2, which gives you 5. So that means that at this point here, our price is what? Is 5. Oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. So at this particular point here, we are basically saying that the price is 5. Right, so we have 5 and we have 3. So our consumer surplus, we get our consumer surplus as the difference between the price that the consumers are willing to pay with the price that they end up paying, which is the equilibrium price. So the difference between 5 and 2 gives us our consumer surplus in this aspect, which is 2. So this is where we are getting our consumer surplus here, the distance between what consumers are willing to pay and what they end up paying. So between 5 and 2, that is where we're getting our consumer surplus there, which is 2. So when the price now changes, now we are having a price support policy, and our new price is now 4. That means that our consumer surplus is going to change as a result of that, and hence as a result, we need to be able to calculate that. So that means that we're going to be having an impact on our consumer surplus. Our consumer surplus is no longer the distance between 5 and 3, but basically the distance between 5 and 4. And what will be our new consumer surplus at that particular level? So 5 minus 4, our consumer surplus is now 1. 5 minus 3, our consumer surplus was 2. So that means we have a reduction in our consumer surplus. So basically we are saying that our consumer surplus is reduced. So consumer surplus after support policy becomes 5 minus 3, okay, 5 minus 4, sorry, which is equals to 1, where previously it was 5 minus 3, which was 2. So the change in the consumer surplus becomes 2 minus 1, which is basically 1. All right, so that is how we're supposed to be illustrating question 3.2. I don't know if you have any questions. Any questions? Anything that you want me to clarify? So if everything is clear, that brings us to the end of today's session in relation to what you're going to be dealing with for the assignment. If there are no questions, it means it's perfectly clear. So there are still many questions that needs to be attempted in relation to this particular assignment. We still have question 1, question 2, we have question 4, 5, we have question 6, we have question 7, we have question 8, we have question 9, which we're going to be dealing with in the coming sections. I don't know if you have any questions. All right, so that means everything is well and is clearly understood. So as you can see that this is a bit different from your ECO20A, where you were just dealing with some of the introductory elements in relation to the subject of microeconomics. But now we are now introducing the combination of mathematics and other elements that we did not learn in ECO20A. All right. Thank you very much. I think we have to close the session as we wait for 7:30 for those that are going to be joining us for ECO20B. That is today's presentation. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Is this going to be recorded?
Yes, there is a recording. You are going to get the recording in the group. You can request the recording in the group. It's on record.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.